Hey everyone, this is smpratte. Yes, we're going to talk about it. I originally thought I'd do a nice little low-key video opening up a couple UPCs. Then one of the biggest stories of the year just happened yesterday. PSA officially cut ties with Ludkins. If you aren't aware, if you live under a Geodude and you missed all this, Ludkins is the longest standing middleman Pokemon service out there. They're like the blueprint. Like they're the first, the OG to do all this. And PSA just put out a statement that they are officially cutting ties. So, what happened? We got a lot to go through. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. And in my opinion, I think middlemen as we knew it are pretty much extinct moving forward. It's a service that I will never use or endorse because of this situation, which is not the first or probably last that we will experience. So PSA said in their statement that they have graded majority to all these orders and they were just waiting for payment. And ultimately, Ludkins couldn't pay the bill. That's the TLDR. So what PSA is doing is they are taking over and handling the remaining orders. And I think for those people, all you have to do is pay the shipping because they already paid up front, or I think most of them did. And therefore, it's just being taken over by PSA. Ludkins just gone, like over with, like just obliterated, like self-destructed, like it's just over. So I think this is going to be the end of all middleman grading. And I'll start with the positive here because there's a lot of tea to go through. There's a lot of juice to get into with this topic. The good of this is pre-2020, middleman made sense. You send them your cards, pay about the same price, do no work. It's a win-win. You didn't have to wait a long time, pretty much similar, comparable turnaround times to a standard service. And if you aren't aware, they're treated differently. They're not treated in the same tiers. They have their own special tier. So it was great before that. You just did no work, you sent them the cards, good to go. But after 2020, after the PSA buyout as well, things changed. When you had the backlog, when everything started to slow down and eventually stop, a lot of orders were in purgatory. You still have people from 2020 that have the EV jungles waiting to be graded, the Pikachu jungles, the Charmander Unlimiteds. Like they're still waiting in line to get those 2020 stonks. They're still waiting to come back home. I have a couple orders from like early 2021 that are still on their Titanic voyage. No kind of telegram, no kind of message, no message in a bottle, like nothing, no kind of communication. So that is when it went from good to bad, was around 2020. That's when things really pivoted. And I'll say that most people, at least on the E4 where I exist, unbelievable patience. The level of patience to be like, yeah, I have a few cards, 1,000 cards, however many. Some people had like tens of thousands of dollars worth of cards. Just chill. Like just waiting. They're like, you know what? I understand it's tumultuous times or whatever. Just smooth back. So you had a very, very patient customer base for a very long time. We're talking literal years, like a long time. You can have a kid, do a lot of things in a couple of years by the time these orders come back home. I mean, there might be a whole nother Olympics. Like some of these orders are spanning 2 Olympics. Like it's that long. So this is when it started to get bad. And then as of the past few months, it really got ugly. And this is where it gets fun. We need to take a little sponsored sip because it's brutal. This is when you start to not only see the awful communication, you also had this thing called phoenixing. So if you aren't aware, I just learned about this recently from someone before. It's basically when a company tries to rebrand, but it's all the same people. And that's what's happening here. Like Ludkins is like the man of many faces. Like there's so many different brands and names. You send payment to this person and this company's over here and it's associated with all these people. It's like the same group of people, but they're changing the banners of the stores every so often. It's another red flag. I don't understand. And also, where's the communication on any of this? That's the focal point here, is that there's been no communication when it's bad, and it gets ugly when you start seeing all this phoenixing and rebranding to the point where there's no kind of response. When people start asking organic questions like, hey, what's going on here with my order? It's the only response I got was this massive, like 5,000 word email that like humble bragged about they'd hired someone from Stanford. It's like, just answer the question. Did you pay or not? That's simple. That's all it is. This is by far one of the most surprisingly fumbled the bag scenarios I've ever experienced. I will say, I don't think this is malicious. I've met Barney. I know pretty much majority of the people involved with all this. I don't think this was malicious. I think they just fumbled the bag hard. And people were trying to get that anger out there. I think there's a lot of displaced anger, and I feel it. Like, I feel the frustration. But I don't know what PSA could have done. You know, it's not their responsibility to make sure all their customers are financially solvent. At the end of the day, Ludkins is just another customer. Just like me at smpratte 2008 when I was sending maybe 10 cards a year versus smpratte now that sends like tens of thousands, it doesn't matter. I'm just a customer. My financial situation is up to me. And that's the same for Ludkins. If they choose to take on hundreds and thousands of people's orders, that's their problem. That has nothing to do with PSA or any other grading company that they might have worked with. Absolutely nothing to do with them. It's not the grading company's job to be the dad and be like, hey, yeah, don't spend that money here. Like, we're going to need to pay for these orders. That's not their job. So there was no kind of communication. I think that's the thing that I can't get past for me. You know, the biggest fumble for me is I can understand even like you bled out expenses because you're waiting for, you know, the whole 2020 situation to fix itself or whatever it is. I can understand this. I understand having overhead. You know, I understand having to pay employees and do whatever it is. I get that. But the bottom line here that I cannot get past is the awful communication. And I'll even do a little something that I talk about on Patreon. We'll do a little public tease here. There are other companies, individuals in the same position that aren't keeping it real. There are other people who have either been completely removed, their relationship with PSA has been very strictly or subtly changed from PSA, and there's no kind of comment about it publicly. It's all this weird phoenixing of rebranding, reassociating, trying to basically self-preserve. And ultimately, to me, that just feels dishonest. You know, if you came out ahead of this and stated what was going on and said, yeah, I messed it up, you know, I'm trying to do my best to fix it. To me, an honest mistake is better than a dishonest one. You know, if you got ahead of this, when that thread was made on E4, because there's two of them now, these like massive threads about Ludkins, I think one's like UK and US. When the first one of those hit, if I were the captain of that ship, I would have day one been like, all right, this is what's up, guys. Like, just made a video and told you what was going on. And I think that's the hardest thing for me to get past here is there was just no communication. Even now, the communication is brutal. When this happened, of course, the US side puts out an email immediately. It's like, oh, suddenly they can send emails. What happened to we spent all of our money and we can't send emails? It's just, who's buying it? Like, how is this? How? Like, I can't imagine being in this position where I'm holding people's cards for years on end and there's no communication. Just no communication at all. I think that's the thing that blows my mind with all this. Again, I don't think this was malicious. I know some people are going hard because there's a lot of people who are out more money than I am, or they have more of a downside, I guess, or they had to do certain things because that money was tied up or cards were tied up. So I get the frustration, but ultimately, I don't think this was malicious. I think it was just absolutely poorly run and managed scenario. I'm trying to do my best here to not like bury them because I have met these people and I think they are nice, kind people. I think they just messed up. Major league. Like PSA 10 fumble. Like big time fumbled the bag. Like one of the record-setting scenarios where I don't know if we'll ever experience this level. People really don't understand. Like Ludkins has been around forever. Every other middleman company is basing their model off of them. Like they're the original. That's how crazy this is. So that takes us into the part 2 of this video, the 2-for-1 here. This is most likely the end of middleman grading. There's other companies out there. It's funny because some of their employees aren't even aware of what's going on with their relationship. Luckily, because there's a saying, you heard it here first. If 2 people know about it, smpratte does. I have so many little birdies out there that are in my Patreon or wherever it is. They may or may not work for PSA. They may or may not work for these auction houses. I get so much intel, and it's unreal that even some of these employees for some of these dealers aren't even aware that they aren't partnered with PSA anymore. They don't even know. Like that's how oblivious all this stuff is. Like it's so unbelievably like cryptic and just unnecessarily like just say the words, like just tell us what's going on. It doesn't need to be this cryptic. Like all you gotta do is just be like, hey, it's rough. Like we got some turbulence. Like people would receive that and be like, yeah, okay, like I hear you. Like let's try to figure this out. Let's try to think of solutions. When it's been kept quiet this whole time, when there's no communication, PSA says something and Ludkins or anyone else in a similar position only responds when they absolutely have to. It's not good. It's just a bad look. You know, it's just a really, really bad look. It just feels like people knew what was going on or had an inclination of what was going on and didn't feel like they should tell their customers, the people who are paying them. I just don't get it. So I think this is going to be the end of middleman grading. Definitely is for me. I would never want to go through this again. Even if you get all your cards back, which knock on wood, I hope that's the solution here is everyone gets their cards back. Even / when that happens, who wants to live this kind of life? Like, we're over here like hostage negotiating our cards to come home. Like, it's just bonkers. Like, I never thought this would ever happen. Like, I mean, you could see the like visceral reaction here. Like, it's just insane. Like, I never thought we would experience something like this. And I don't know how anyone can have any confidence in a middleman company moving forward. I'll even say, like, when back in the day, we're talking like super low key Pokemon, pre 2020, pre Pokemon Go. I remember sending cards off for people on E4, you know, just as like a, hey, yeah, I'll throw a couple in there to my order, whatever. Never really made much, if any, money at all. And even then, I was like, this is such a liability. You know, this is such a high risk for such a small margin. You know, if any one of these orders is gone, like that can just end the whole business. So it's one of those business models that already was very tepid. It was something that was not strong. All these companies, this is not unique to Pokemon. There's been this in sports. There's other scenarios where they've gone belly up and, you know, you just have to do this arbitrage thing, getting your cards back. I have no confidence in it moving forward. I don't care who you are, because these people that are involved with this, you know, are all nice, good people. At least that was always my opinion of them, and they couldn't manage it. So I'm just so sick and tired of like, oh, it's PSA's changing this, PSA's doing this. It's like, your job as the company, if that's true, is to tell the customers that. Don't do this cryptic nonsense where it's like, oh, we spent all of our money on this, on our tracking thing that doesn't even work anyway. It's like everything just is it just feels like being gaslit. It's like, don't piss in my shoe and tell me it's raining. Like, just give me the real answer. Like, the real honest answer would have, I think, alleviated a lot of this. It would have softened the blow for a lot of the customers. I think if you'd have been ahead and be like, yeah, you know, we're having a lot of issues. So ultimately, I think PSA is just moving away from the middleman model. You can already see evidence of it where they're opening up new grading offices. They already have one in Japan. There's one talked about in the East Coast, UK and France, I think, or other locations as well. They're in the crosshairs. So it's one of those things where PSA, ever since they've been bought out, has, in my opinion, just taken all the inefficiencies and said, all right, we're going to get rid of this and improve it. I think having more offices overseas is the answer. That way people over in whatever country have a better opportunity or an easier way to submit their cards than go through this mess. You know, attaching your cards like a carrier pigeon. Hopefully it doesn't, you know, die on the way. Like that's what this was. Middleman companies were really a vestige of the past. They were a vestige of a simpler time. You know, going back to the good, only brief positive part of this video, it was when everything was simplified. You didn't have all this money. You didn't have people sending in hundreds of thousands of cards or whatever it is. It was a very simple market, where today it isn't. You know, today it's a lot more competitive. You can't be this one guy, two guys doing this type of business model. And ultimately, because it's not really a business model. It's attaching yourself to a business. You know, it's basically something that if the actual business decides to do their own, like, you know, grade direct type thing, service, it's game over. You know, it's not a proprietary thing. That's why you have all these middleman people. You have like middlemanception. Like, there's some middleman who would send to the bigger middleman, you know, to grade for their buddies or whatever. It's an open market. But the point is that this is just one of those things that work better in a simple market. Now you do need an actual company doing this, not someone who is just flying by the seat of their pants or who has taken on more than they can chew. This whole situation is just what you never want to experience. It's the worst possible outcome. It's the nuclear option. And I think all we can do is just learn from it. The one other thing I'll say here is it's exhibit number 1562 on why I don't partner. I don't even know how many notches on the wall I have and reasons for why I don't partner. It's just, and it's hard because, like, again, these people are not bad. I don't think they're like Dr. Robotnik and like trying to be malicious here. I don't think there was malicious intent. I think they just fumbled it. Like, they just mismanaged money, which is their fault. I'm not trying to downplay that. It's just making the distinction that I don't think these people just woke up and chose evil. Like, they just woke up and messed up. Like, they made bad choices, and this is the result of it. And again, it's because it's not a real business. Being a middleman grader is one of those things that is a service that I think is best to do with friends and people you know. And when you try to venture out and pretend you're whatever, like the cringe things that people think they are in this hobby, like I'm a COO of a global conglomerate. It's like, dude, you send in Pokemon cards from 4 people to the actual company that grades them. Like, take about 20% off. Like, it's unbelievable. The gusto from some of the people who are middlemen, CEO, COO, CFO. Like, it's like, dude, you're just sending in Pokemon cards. Like, calm down. Like, I've never once and never will say I'm the CEO of smpratte. Like, let's keep it real. Like, I'm in a grandma house wearing a t-shirt with a bad dad joke on it, the good, bad, and the ugly. Like, that's the level of, like, I don't know, like humbleness that these companies should have. Is that this is not something that you should be ever thinking as a serious business. It's just a service that should have stayed within friend groups, and that's it. I will never, ever endorse another middleman service. I will never, ever use one of them. It is just completely, unbelievably, absurdly so much risk. For now, it's no upside. Your cards take longer. You pay the same amount. There's no upside. It's just, there's literally no point in using them anymore. So, yeah, there you go. That is the very hot and fired up smpratte. It's just a rough one. This was not fun. I don't enjoy making this video, but it's one of those that had to be done because I mean, I'm technically a customer, and I don't know if I've ever experienced anything so terrible with communication. Like, the communication to me blows my mind. When I have an issue on eBay or an issue on my end, whatever it is, even like technical issue on E4 or something like that, or someone's payment didn't go through on Patreon, it's like that. It's same day. Like, it's not like, oh, here's this mass email we send out because we have to respond now because so many people are complaining. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, I just will never, ever endorse one of these companies ever again. You can give me the all-star lineup. I won't ever be one of them either. I will never do this type of thing. You couldn't pay me enough money. I saw the writing on the wall back in like 2015 or whatever that was, 2014. And I was like, no, this is an insanely awful business model because it's not a business. It's just something you should do for your friends and call it a day. That's it. So there you have it. Very spicy, very juicy. PSA booted Ludkins. I think it's the end of middleman grading. I don't really have anything positive to say about these companies because majority of them are not communicating with their customer base. To the point where even some of the owners aren't communicating to their employees the actual relationship that's going on with PSA. Yeah, so there we go. There is the impromptu video that I did not plan on doing, and hopefully you guys like it, and maybe we'll do the nice casual UPC opening to balance out this one. So, as usual, guys, you know the deal. Let me know how you feel, and that's pretty much it. Till next time.